As you gaze through this image of Jesus Christ, have you ever asked this question? Is this how the Son of God truly looks like? We can't blame you for feeling a bit of skepticism. For centuries, the true image of Jesus has remained a mystery and subject to intense debates. However, an extraordinary discovery has been made that might finally put these doubts to rest. A famous letter written by the Roman official Audrelius Pluvius Lentulus, which vividly describes Jesus Christ in remarkable detail. In this video, we're not only going to share some fascinating details about how Jesus looks, but an inspiring story as well that happened in the Philippines that proves that indeed, Jesus is real. So stick around. You might wonder how a simple letter from a relatively unknown figure could finally solve one of biblical archaeology's enduring mysteries. How credible is this letter in the first place? Well, Lentulus wasn't just any observer. He was a first-hand witness who knew Jesus personally. As was customary for officials of his time, he regularly sent letters to Caesar in Rome. Historical records tell us that a Roman consul named Lentulus was indeed present in Judea during the time of Jesus' trial and crucifixion. His influential family even finds mention in the writings of the Jewish historian Josephus in Antiquities of the Jews. Also, the monumental inscription Deeds of the Divine Augustus, composed by the first Roman Emperor Augustus himself, records the election of a Publius Lentulus as a Roman consul during his reign, which spanned from 27 BC to 14 AD. So, let's now solve an old-age mystery through the eyes of a man named Lentulus. Our story begins with the intriguing evolution of how Jesus has been portrayed in art. As time passed, his image has changed to reflect the beliefs and emotions of different eras. The most ancient depiction of Jesus discovered was this image capturing a moment shared in all three synoptic Gospels: the miraculous healing of a paralyzed man, lowered through a roof to meet Jesus. In this depiction, the healed man, now bearing his bed, stands to the left, while Jesus is illustrated on the right, embodying the traditional Roman aesthetic with short hair, a bare face, and adorned in a modest tunic and cloak. This depiction is believed to date back to around 235 AD, illustrating the rarity of visual representations from the first 2 centuries after Jesus' passing. However, the image of Jesus most people recognize today originates from Warner Sallman's 1940 painting Head of Christ, depicting Jesus with light eyes and hair. Being a marketing genius that he was, he transformed his work into a worldwide icon. Now you can see his painting pretty much everywhere, from prayer cards and stained glass windows to oil paintings and calendars. It represented the culmination of a long tradition where white European artists created and circulated images of Christ that resembled their own likeness. For a long time, this image of Jesus went unchallenged and was widely accepted as an accurate portrayal of history's most famous biblical figure. But as the years have passed, people have begun to question the accuracy of this popular image. Many now agree that Jesus was likely of Middle Eastern descent rather than European, and the historical Jesus probably had the brown eyes and skin typical of first-century Jews from Galilee, a region in biblical Israel. However, all of this remains a speculation, as there are no images of Jesus from his lifetime. Even the Holy Bible offers no details about Jesus' physical features. There is some disagreement in the biblical texts regarding his appearance. The prophet Isaiah says the coming Savior had no beauty or majesty, while the book of Psalms describes him as fairer than the children of men, where fair suggests physical beauty. Here's the intriguing part. The earliest depictions of Jesus often portrayed him as a youthful, Apollo-like figure. However, after Christianity came under the protection of Roman Emperor Constantine in the 4th century, the imagery of Christ underwent a dramatic shift, almost exclusively depicting a bearded Savior. Could this shift be connected to the newfound safety that allowed precious relics like the Shroud of Turin and Veronica's veil to be revealed? Many scholars believe that both holy relics bear the miraculous image of the Savior, an image not crafted by human hands. This is where the famous letter from a Roman official who lived during Jesus' time comes into play. While the Holy Bible remains silent on Christ's physical appearance, a letter by the Roman consul Lentulus to Emperor Tiberius is the only known document to offer a detailed description of Jesus. It paints a vivid picture of a time long past when key figures, such as Pontius Pilate, were regularly communicating with Rome. This remarkable document, discovered in a monastery among other ancient writings, dates back to the 12th year of Emperor Tiberius's reign, although scholars remain divided on the authenticity of Lentulus's letter, which was intended as an official report to Emperor Tiberius. Here are the translated contents of Lentulus's letter. There has appeared in our times, and there still lives, a man of great power, called Jesus Christ. The people call him prophet of truth, his disciples, Son of God. He raises the dead and heals infirmities. He is a man of medium size. He has a venerable aspect, and his beholders can both fear and love him. His hair is of the color of the ripe hazelnut, straight down to the ears, but below the ears wavy and curled, with a bluish and bright reflection flowing over his shoulders. It is parted in two on the top of the head, after the pattern of the Nazarenes. His brow is smooth and very cheerful, with a face without wrinkle or spot, embellished by a slightly reddish complexion. His nose and mouth are faultless. His beard is abundant, of the color of his hair, not long, but divided at the chin. His aspect is simple and mature. His eyes are blue-gray and bright. He is terrible in his reprimands, sweet and amiable in his admonitions, cheerful without loss of gravity. He was never known to laugh, but often to weep. His stature is straight, his hands and arms beautiful to behold. His conversation is grave, infrequent, and modest. He is the most beautiful among the children of men. Through this letter, we've also known some other things about Jesus. For instance, he stood moderately tall, around 5 feet 10 inches to 6 feet. Though his verbal exchanges could be fierce, his intentions were always kind, making him both lovable and serious at the same time. People often remarked on his handsome appearance, comparing him to his mother, who was known as the most beautiful woman in the area. She was modest, and Jesus inherited not just her looks, but also her humility. The letter from Lentulus also talked about Jesus' effect on the people of Jerusalem. Crowds would gather to hear him speak, amazed by his wisdom. Even though he hadn't studied in schools, he seemed to know everything. He walked around barefoot with his head uncovered, attracting many followers. But when people stood before him, they often trembled, filled with awe and admiration. They said they had never seen a man like him before, or heard sermons as powerful as his. To some, especially the Jews, Jesus was seen as divine. They would share this belief with others, and even tell Caesar about him. While some saw him as a threat, he was truly a bringer of goodness and joy. The people of Israel would say that Jesus never hurt anyone. Instead, he always did what was right and spread joy and peace wherever he went. Now we have a clearer picture of what Jesus might have looked like. But here's the exciting part. By combining Lentulus's description with the clues found in the Shroud of Turin, we can paint a more complete and vivid image of Christ's appearance. Professor Giovanni Giudica Cordiglia, a distinguished expert on the Shroud of Turin, brought his experience as a doctor and university professor of forensic medicine to bear on interpreting the data collected from this mysterious relic. He described the man wrapped in the shroud as a figure of remarkable beauty and exceptional stature. Standing around 6 feet tall, this individual possessed a physique that was perfectly proportioned, with a graceful and balanced form that embodied the ideal standard of physical perfection. Despite the wear and tear the cloth had suffered over the centuries, it was clear that the man's face was soft and gentle, with a broad, straight forehead, a nose that was straight with a slight downward turn, and large, slightly protruding cheeks. According to the anthropometric calculations, Christ was likely in far better physical condition than the average man of his time. After a careful analysis of facial data, Cordiglia reached an intriguing conclusion about Christ's cranial capacity. He estimated it to be an impressive 1575 cc, placing Jesus in the category of megalocephalic or large-headed individuals. With a cranial capacity coefficient of 95, this suggested that his brain weighed 1,492 grams, significantly more than the average. Such findings hint at a person of extraordinary intelligence and genius. The Shroud of Turin, along with the letter from Lentulus, allow us to visualize and artfully construct a more accurate image of our Savior. Together, they help us appreciate the loving and tender face that endured the beatings and the excruciating suffering of the cross to save us. Yet, having an accurate representation of Jesus is less important than believing in his existence. Have you asked yourself this question? Do I believe that Jesus is real? Well, before we end this video, we'd like to share one interesting story of a dying young adult from the Philippines that would surely rest your doubts about God's existence. Jonathan Sia, a 23-year-old from Cebu City, was a devout young man known for his strong faith. From a young age, he served as a youth leader in his parish and was on track to graduate with Latin honors this year. It seemed like his future was incredibly bright. Sadly, Jonathan suddenly succumbed to illness and was admitted to the hospital with a severe case of LBM and fever. Despite the doctor's best efforts, he was unable to recover. However, just before he passed away, something extraordinary happened. Jonathan signaled to his father, Joel, as if he was seeing someone. But Joel couldn't understand him. Desperate to understand, the father handed him a piece of paper to write down his thoughts. But Jonathan's hands trembled so much that he couldn't hold the pen properly, leaving his father unable to make sense of his son's final message. Just before the nurses called Code Blue, Jonathan managed to scribble a final message. Jesus is real. Joel was amazed because, despite his son's weakened state, the message was perfectly clear and easy to read. Like Jonathan, the time will come when we'll finally meet him in heavenly paradise, and his appearance may be more magnificent than anything we have ever imagined. If you'd want a more deep dive into the Shroud of Turin, you can watch this next video.